The doors open, and the line starts to move. The usher takes your ticket and points you in the direction of your seat. Pre-show music plays over the sound system as you side shuffle past the knees of the folks in your row. You stick your bag and your jacket under the seat, and you sit down. You leaf through the playbill, futz around on your phone, until the music starts to fade. The lights in the auditorium dim, and the lights come up on the stage. The show is beginning. This is one of those plays set in a single location. 3 walls on the stage represent the interior of a French bistro. Now, French bistros typically have at least 4 walls, and that's where you come in. The lip of the stage, what theater kids call the proscenium, is where the 4th wall would be, and it's your job to pretend that it's there. Or, now let me rephrase that. It's your job to ignore that it's not. That is the bargain you make when the lights go down. To the characters on stage, everything inside those 4 walls is real, and nothing on the other side of that 4th wall exists. The ambient noise, the guy 2 rows down 4 seats over who's clearly playing Words with Friends, even you yourself. You are, and this is a nerd word again, non-diegetic. You're here, but you exist outside the story. That is until...
My name is Albert Einstein.
You can't be. You just can't be.
Sorry, I'm not myself today. Better?
No, that's not what I mean. In order of appearance.
Come again?
In order of appearance. You're not third. Excuse me, ma'am. Can I borrow your program? You're 4th. It says so right here. Cast in order of appearance. I knew you were 4th. I knew it when you walked in.
So this is what we call breaking the 4th wall, and Steve Martin's Picasso at the La Panagile is a great show for demonstrating it because the character Freddy literally reaches his hand through the wall and into the audience. Like many 4th wall breaks, this is played for laughs, because it's a kind of narrative transgression. You're not supposed to do that. When the diegetic intrudes upon the non, the audience is reminded of all the things they were ignoring. That this is not a French bistro in 1904, but a bunch of plywood flats and actors in pancake makeup and period dress. The disbelief that was suspended is brought back to school, as it were. But what I want to highlight is how durable the 4th wall is. Like, for starters, in order for this joke to work, the audience has to be already suspending its disbelief. The boundary must be drawn before it can be broken. And shortly after this gag, Einstein exits, Germaine enters.
Sorry, I'm late.
Freddy makes a little wink to the audience.
You're not late. You're 3rd.
And the scene continues as if nothing had happened. The audience wraps itself back up in the story, and the 4th wall is rebuilt, so that when it's broken later in the show...
When will you be there?
When the play's over.
It's funny again. If the wall had stayed down, that joke wouldn't work. Why do we build the wall? So we can have a wall to break. Often enough, these acknowledgments in theater, but also film, novels, video games, anytime a narrative reminds you of its own artifice, it is contained, such that it does not disrupt the narrative too much. It operates like the soliloquies in Shakespeare, or the songs in musicals. Deadpool speaks to the audience, and seemingly everyone around him goes deaf while he does.
We're the X-Men, dated metaphor for racism in the 60s. So, respect.
But what I got curious about when I first read Francesco Cassetti's Inside the Gaze, or more specifically, it was very dense Italian film theory and I was 19, so I read the glossary, was... what if you didn't make the bargain when the lights went down? What if breaking the 4th wall wasn't a disruption of the rules of narrative because the story is built such that the artifice is part of the narrative? Can you break the 4th wall diegetically? Now, that was a punchy idea as a teenager, and as a man in his late 30s, I'm aware that this idea has been approached many times in many ways throughout the history of storytelling. We're currently living in a golden age of meta-narrative where most major properties have folded the audience's existing relationship to that property into the text. But I want to talk about my favorite example, Abed Nadir. Now, my feelings about the show Community are...
Some folks say transfer formal isn't really rolling off the tongue, so we're just gonna call it the
But I love me some Abed.
Because, let's face it, I'm pretty adorable.
Abed is a pop culture damaged perpetual college student raised by his television who loves TV to the point where it's his primary metaphor for looking at the world. In other words, he's an American millennial. His tendency to filter his life through sitcom tropes is lent a certain pointedness by being a character on a tropey sitcom. Por ejemplo, when Annie asks him for help.
Wow, I didn't realize we were really good friends. I figured we were more like Chandler and Phoebe. They never really had stories together.
Or when the new school year coincides with the conclusion of the previous season's arcs.
I'm hoping we can move away from the soapy relationshipy stuff and into bigger, fast-paced, self-contained escapades.
Or when it looks like he's going to spend a day locked in study hall.
Are we going to the puppy parade or not? Because this is starting to feel like a bottle episode.
In these moments, Abed Nadir is not breaking the fourth wall. He may not fully understand that real life doesn't have bottle episodes, but this is real life to him. He's not seeing the cameras pointing at him. He's not disrupting the narrative by winking at a sitcom audience. But there is a sitcom audience. We are the sitcom audience, and the writers did just use Abed to wink at us. Cooperative calligraphy is a bottle episode. Abed is speaking diegetically to his friends who read his comments as the pop culture references they are, but they double as things a person who was breaking the fourth wall might say.
Hey.
Hi. I'm here to do my third act apology.
The rules of narrative are not transgressed, and yet we are all the same, constantly reminded that we are watching a work of fiction.
This is totally meta.
This kind of inter-reference in which a sitcom points constantly at itself, at other sitcoms, and at the sitcom as a medium can come across as kind of, masturbatory? David Foster Wallace argued the pop culture reference in mass media serves three functions. 1, to help create a mood of irony and irreverence. 2, to make us uneasy and so comment on the vapidity of US culture. And 3, most important these days, to be just plain realistic. I would say 2 is far less prevalent now than when he was writing. Because the reality is this. How are you gonna write a 20-something millennial in 2009 who doesn't talk a lot about what's on television? This is a conundrum many writers face. There is still the high culture urge to make art that is timeless, that avoids what Foster Wallace referred to as the frivolous now, and the low culture necessity of, not looking dated 8 months after you air. This can be approached many ways. You can avoid reference and just take the verisimilitudinous hit. You can create fictional in-universe pop culture for your characters to reference. You can reference pop culture that is old enough to be considered timeless, functionally setting your story in a different frivolous now. For example, the way Sex Education and Life is Strange are both canonically set in the present, but aesthetically set in the late 70s and early 90s respectively. Or you can embrace chaos and just reference contemporary culture. But once you're a show on TV, with characters referencing other shows currently airing on TV, things might get a little meta, especially shows that lean into it the way Community does.
Please don't jim the camera like that.
Jim the camera?
So what does this do to the fourth wall? That supposedly sanctified construct, the violation of which is most often either a failure or an act of deliberate anarchy. How are we supposed to suspend disbelief for stories that don't even pretend not to be fake, and whose primary pleasure is in acknowledging the fakery? Abed is, to me, a distillation of the modern audience's more intricate relationship to the fourth wall. Art imitates life, and when much of life is spent discussing popular art begins to discuss itself. And art that discusses itself requires a more liminal relationship to the fourth wall. These days, we don't choose to either see it or ignore it, but pay both kinds of attention at once, letting the fourth wall as needed fade in and out of visibility, like glass when it catches the light, or seeing your face in the monitor after it fades to black. This was maybe inevitable in a media-saturated environment where the lines between audience, participant, and creator continue to blur, where we watch even straightforward media with an eye towards how it's made because we imagine making something like it ourselves one day, or because any viewing experience is potential content. In a world where it is rarer and rarer to experience art in a darkened theater that shuts out the world, but where it's watched on phones during bus rides, in the background while cooking, in an open tab while writing emails, we keep fiction and reality running in tandem, shifting between them with little more than a saccade. The real world isn't forgotten, but edged out of the foreground during a cigarette break. What tickles me about this is Brecht violated suspension of disbelief to create distance between the fiction and its audience, but postmodern reflexivity just makes Abed relatable. He watches TV the same way we watch Community. You can imagine him watching his own show and responding much the way I am now. Like, okay, you want me to mentally construct a fourth wall that the performers will pretend is there, but the writers will constantly and entertainingly bring to my attention its non-existence, such that I need to suspend my disbelief while thinking about the fact that I am suspending it, which should be mutually exclusive modes of thought, but to even understand what I'm watching, I'll need to do both at once?
Cool. Cool.
Quick announcement while I've got your attention. You may remember this video I made called Lady Eboshi is Wrong like 4.5 years ago. It was about Princess Mononoke. I was really proud of that video. I feel like it encapsulated one of the core tenets of my moral philosophy pretty well. Polygon called it one of the best video essays of 2018, which was really flattering. But longtime subscribers will probably be aware you haven't been able to watch that video on this website for like 4 years because Studio Ghibli took it down. I mean, they told YouTube to take it down and YouTube just took it down. No disputes, no appeals, deleted it. But that video is back. I would like to introduce you to Innuendo Studios' first ever sponsor, Nebula, the streaming service that I am now on, where you can watch all of my videos, including, finally, Lady Eboshi is Wrong. Nebula is a subscription service, a curated collection of over 150 video makey people like myself. There's Mikey, there's Laura Crone, who played Jermaine. You got Cat Black and Princess Weeks and Jacob Geller, who has a very similar voice to me, but I promise is a different person. And we get paid from those subscriptions. There are no ads. And that means there's no having to stay advertiser friendly. So if Abigail Thorne wants to write and direct a play where she plays a trans Hotspur, that would almost certainly get demonetized on YouTube, but instead it gets filmed, streamed, and hosted as a Nebula original. If you follow my link in the down there part, you get 40% off an annual subscriptions. That comes out to like $250 a month, and you get access to Nebula classes. That's where internet artists from the Nebula community teach you how to do the kinds of things we do. I can recommend the Bright Trips Guide to Theater if you want to be a geek like me who hangs out in community theaters and uses words like proscenium. So if you would like to see any of that, or if you would like to see Lady Eboshi is Wrong, or if you want to see the semiotics of cuck but you're Danish and it is blocked in just your country again for some reason, maybe hop on over to Nebula and I will see you there.